Thank you very much, Renee. What did I learn from that? Quite a bit, actually. There's a load of information in there. We've got to expect perhaps lower returns going forward. We can't rely on equity bond diversification, continued volatility, but I've also learned, I think, that with the resource and the depth and the strength, obviously, that firms such as JP Morgan have got, you can deliver in various different market conditions. And I particularly like the clear objectives. We very much look at that at Square Mile. That's a decent way you can actually just see whether people are actually doing what they say they should be doing. Okay, well, our next presenter, Ian Linden, perhaps needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. He's probably one of the reasons you keep turning up for this event. Knowledge, they say, is his knowledge, they say, is non-secundus, or second to none. And I've never met anyone who's got as much knowledge of this pension market. So, interesting debate, I think, on what happened in the last finance bill and how it will affect us and your clients. So, without further ado, the floor is yours, Ian. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Mark said, the technical support unit. I think the budget this year, for the first time in a little while, seems a bit of a damp squib. And I think there's a huge sigh of relief in the industry, particularly given the tectonic upheavals of the last few years. And so at first glance, there didn't seem to be very much in the budget. And really what it contained was a number of points to correct anomalies in the legislation that exists, and then other parts of it we were already forewarned about, i.e. the reduction in the lifetime allowance. So today, what I'm going to do is very quickly look at the changes and pick up on the anomalies before visiting the lifetime allowance reduction, and then its potential implications, and before finishing with my opinion, and it is only my opinion, and some of the questions to be asked around the lifetime ISA or pension. The amendments I'm now going to sort of look at will come into effect once Royal Assent is granted. So at the moment, some of these things won't have any bearing on particular client circumstances. But at present, if someone has an arrangement where there's both crystallised and uncrystallised funds in it, and that person is serious ill health, then they can actually take serious ill health lump sum from the uncrystallised element. So the amendment is there to change this to the effect that that uncrystallised element can then or now be taken as a serious lump sum ill health, provided those benefits are extinguished at that point. So what it will do is it will leave the uncrystallised element coming out and the crystallised part left within the arrangement. So it just gives people the opportunity to take that lump sum out, whereas previously, until Royal Assent, they wouldn't have been able to do that. Okay. But all the usual conditions apply to serious ill health lump sum, so the individual has to have life expectancy of less than a year and some lifetime allowance left before they take the lump sum. And if that lump sum is paid before the individual achieves age 75, then there is a test against the lifetime allowance, but the lump sum is thereafter tax-free. If the individual is serious ill health after age 75, then whereas at the moment there would be a tax charge where they took that lump sum, going forward, it will be taxed at the individual's marginal rate, so it will be treated as income in the tax year they take it, and taxed at the marginal rate. Whereas at the moment, or from the 5th of April, post the 5th of April last year, until Royal Assent, the tax charge is 45%. And in the case of a charity lump sum, it's a specific lump sum. We got quite a few questions on it. One of the conditions is that it can only be paid under the age of 75, where it's a crystallised fund. So going forward, the amendment would be that anybody can leave the lump sum to charity, whether it's uncrystallised or not. But again, there's obviously the usual conditions attached to pension legislation, because nothing is ever that straightforward. So where an individual has a surviving dependent, you could in theory leave it to charity, but it would not be a charity lump sum. Right. next two lump sums are, the first one, the trivial commutation lump sum in respect of a money purchase arrangement. Scheme pension and a money purchase arrangement is very much a niche market, so I don't think I've ever come across this as a question, but it is part of the legislation. It does deal with it normally, and effectively what it's saying is that anyone who is in a scheme pension and a money purchase arrangement can use the trivial commutation lump sum as a way to get a small pot out of their pension. Okay? But for someone to have total pension rights of 30,000 or less in a scheme pension, I would suggest is pretty unusual. So the only thing I can think of, again being the usual cynical Scotsman, is that there's some civil servant's spouse that is in this position and they would like to get that money out. And the final one on this area is the uncrystallised lump sum death benefit. Again, in the years that I've been working in technical support, I have never had a question about cash balance pension arrangement, and that's not to say that they don't exist. But in reality, what we're saying again here is it's a very, very low-key issue, resolving something that somebody in the civil service got a problem with. But effectively, where you have a cash balance arrangement, there's a death benefit to pay out, and there's a shortfall in the cash balance arrangement, then the employer can top that arrangement up to the level of the death benefit, as long as they do so at the time of the death. All right? But probably a bigger concern was that of the dependent's pension. At the moment, the legislation impacts on someone who is in dependent drawdown, and the definition of a child who is a dependent of the member ends on the child's 23rd birthday, unless the child is dependent for any physical or mental reason. So the implication is that, as things currently stand, the dependent would have to exhaust the drawdown fund before they hit age 23. The legislation itself is silent on the situation should someone have a pot left at the age of 23. And in the past it probably wasn't an issue, but with pension freedoms from last year, people have that ability to continue on with their pension, dependent's pension, stroke like beneficiary's pension, right through to their death. So this was becoming a bit of an issue for people in that position. So what we have is an amendment contained in the Finance Bill that will extend the definition of dependent to someone beyond the age of 23, regardless of whether it's physical or mental health issues. Now it only applies to someone who achieves age 23 the day after royal assent is granted. And similarly, if they were to go into a temporary annuity, short-term annuity, then it would only apply if that temporary annuity was set up post the royal assent date. Okay. But what it does do is it ensures the ability for people who have received a dependent's pension to continue beyond the age of 23. And there will be a few scenarios out there where that actually applies. So you could have a situation where there's 3 children, and father leaves, or mother even, leaves the money to the 3 children. 2 of them are over the age of 23, so things presently stand. They go into beneficiaries' drawdown, they can continue to fund and take the income from the pension, potentially tax-free, whereas the youngest, who's only 21, at age 23, if they've not exhausted the fund, they're left potentially with a pot of money that there's nothing in the legislation that allows them to do anything. So that change then allows them to continue on beyond that age of 23. Okay. It was it's pre-announced that the LT was going to reduce to 1 million from the 5th of April this year, and that transitional protection in the form of fixed protection and individual protection 2016 would be available. So I'm not going to really linger on this slide, as we're all probably fairly familiar with both fixed protection, which is the 3rd iteration of it, and in the case of individual protection, the 2nd. One of the differences to point out is that unlike in previous forms of these protections, there's no cut-off date for applying for it. So as long as the individual can satisfy the conditions for applying for it, and they haven't done anything to void that at the point of applying, then they could, in theory, apply for the protection tomorrow, next month, next year, or even 10 years from now. But up until July, it will be done in writing, and will be given a temporary reference number. So it's advised that when you have a client who's crystallising benefits for the first time, post April this year, prior to doing that, they apply for the reference number. And then if they furnish that reference number to the scheme administrator, they can use the appropriate lifetime allowance to calculate how much of the lifetime allowance is being used up by that benefit crystallisation event. If that reference number is not provided, then the scheme administrator is duty bound to use the standard lifetime allowance. So up until July, you can apply in writing, you'll have a temporary reference number, and then once the online facility becomes available, you can then apply for a permanent number, and you have to do that. You can't just rely on the temporary number. It's an obligation to apply for the permanent number as well. So in the case of fixed protection, in the period from the 6th of April 2016 and the point of applying for it, the individual can't have taken any action that would invalidate the application itself. So examples of that would be where the individual would benefit. So if someone from the 5th of April, in the case of a money purchase arrangement, made a contribution into the pension, then they would not be able to tick the box saying that they hadn't done anything to invalidate the protection that they're going to apply for. And similarly, if they set up a new arrangement, so for instance, they became a member of a debt service scheme a few years down the line, that would be deemed to be, as long as the debt service was written under pension legislation, it would be deemed to be setting up a new arrangement, and it would invalidate their ability to apply for fixed protection. Okay. So the question is it appropriate to actually apply for it now, or is it better to wait until near the point of actually taking your benefits? Going back to what was said earlier about human nature and things like that, I think from my personal opinion, it would be better to apply for it now so that there is something on the file to remind the client that they actually are going to rely on this form of protection. Because we've all had experience of people inadvertently deciding to put money into the pension because they've had a pay rise or a bonus or whatever else. And if there's nothing on their file to remind them that they have these forms of protection, or particularly fixed protection, then once they've done that, then there is no ability to apply for it. So the reduction in the lifetime allowance to £1 million will result in a lot of people who in the past probably never gave it a second thought. So people like senior managers in local government, the health service, doctors, headmasters, etc. Will possibly now be caught by this £1 million lifetime allowance. And even people who have just got a few years to retire with a modest size of pot, with 15 years to go, would potentially be caught by this. Anyone want to guess as to the size of a fund someone 15 years from retirement might need to have a lifetime allowance? Potentially. 600? Specific, 50 pence. Okay. In the case of someone with the size of fund not making any further contributions, we're talking about £1 million. And what I've done here is I've ignored any adjustment for CPI in this slide. Okay. If we look back to last September, CPI was negligible. When originally it was negative, and something recently was 0.3. If CPI is 2%, then it will take approximately 12 years for the standard lifetime allowance to go back up to 1.25 million. If it's 0.5%, it's a ridiculous 45 years before we get back to 1.25 million. So the working life of an individual, if we continue to remain in a low inflation environment, it will be 40 years or thereabouts before people get back to that £1 million. So ignoring that, as I said, 500,000 for someone with no further contributions, someone with a top tapered annual allowance restricted to £10,000 per annum, then about £450,000 with 15 years to go to retirement. So I'm sure we've got quite a few clients in the room here that fall into that. So the people that in the past never gave it any thought whatsoever to the fact that we have a lifetime allowance issue and are now going to potentially be caught with it. But if we just focus our mind a little bit on that for a moment, It's human nature to get hung up on tax rates. But I'm sure if you said to your client, would you prefer 45% of something or 100% of nothing, they would go with the former. And the other thing about it is that we balk at that rate of 55%, but really what we should be looking at is the effective rate of tax on the total pension pot. I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay. But from there, let's just sort of look at a couple of examples that hopefully pick up on these issues. As always, by the time I read this out and get to the sort of second sentence, you'll probably skim through it all. But suffice to say that John has a choice. He can remain an active member of the scheme, take the extra income. Sorry. He can remain an active member of the scheme, take the pension contributions going in, or alternatively he can cease to be a member and then pay the net income that he's receiving into an ISA. Okay. But by remaining in the scheme, he's undoubtedly going to have a lifetime allowance issue. So these are just the assumptions that have been made. If he takes the income option, because his income is 100,000, the extra income takes him above that, he starts to lose his personal allowance. So the net effect is that £6,000. So although it's lost to 17,000, the net effect for him in his hand is about £6,500. And if we just assume that CPI is 2% to try and push up index lifetime allowance a little bit, and then at the point of taking the benefits, John fully takes his benefits, but the excess over the lifetime allowance he retains within the pension fund, which is called the retained amount, and the tax charge there is 25% of what the excess was. So at retirement, John's got a fund. I keep forgetting I've got a screen down there, but I'm slightly small, so I can't see the full screen. I should have had a little box. It's fine for Alistair, it's 6 foot whatever from the box. So the funds at retirement are just 1.08 million and 1.2 million respectively. If John is relying on fixed protection with a lifetime allowance of 1.25 million, then there's no charge to consider where he hasn't funded the pension. However, if he remains an active member, then he would have a tax charge to pay, and in this example that would be £29,611. So going back to the point I made earlier about an effective rate of tax, if John were to die before age 75 and hadn't, for simplicity's sake, crystallised any of the fund, then that £29,000 equates to a tax rate of just 2.5%, which in my opinion is quite effective tax planning. So there's still a place for people funding pension. It might not be, as Alistair was alluding to earlier, about blending income and different plots of money. It might not necessarily be about funding income in retirement, but it might be part of an estate planning exercise. Okay? So effective tax rate at 2.5%. But looking at the numbers again, there's a little difference in the PCLS between the two options. Therefore, I think it comes down to the differential between the drawdown funds, whilst also factoring in the ISA pot. So if we're to treat the ISA pot as income, so they can take that income tax-free, and we gross it up, say, by the basic rate of tax, then it comes to a little over £47,500. And if we take the slightly higher PCLS, do the same thing with that, the differential between the two comes down to sort of £38,000, £39,000 in favour of remaining an active member. So despite John having potentially a lifetime allowance charge to pay, it seems that in this scenario it would still be better off to remain an active member of the scheme, even ignoring the possibility of passing on the death benefits, the majority of which would be tax-free. Okay. Let's look at another little example, slightly different numbers. So Neil's got 5 years to retire, and I'm not sure if he's going to stay with us for 5 years, but anyway, Neil, larger fund, 950,000. But unfortunately, in Neil's case, if he ceases to be a member of the pension scheme, the company won't top up his salary. So what he does do, though, he has a personal contribution of 5,000 per annum into the pension. So if he ceases to be a member, the net amount that he would be paying into his pension, into his ISA would be £3,000. So again, assumptions made, similar to the last ones. Just quickly skip on. So in this instance, the size of the fund of retirement is 1.21 mil. Sorry, yeah, 1.21 million. You only see the top row. And 1.33 million. So there's a greater tax charge in this example because we're higher amount to begin with, and closer to the current lifetime allowance of 1 million. Right. So Neil also enjoys a higher PCLS by becoming a deferred member of the scheme, so he stops funding it, gives him a higher PCLS because he's relying on his fixed protection. Taking the same approach as before, if we gross up the amount in the ICE support, then the differential is reduced slightly to just over £24,500. So it's still in favour of Neil remaining an active member, and the effective rate of tax was up again because of the £61,000 in lifetime allowance charge, but we're still looking at 4.6%. So it's clear cut then. Remain an active member of the scheme. Well, obviously that's not the case. Your individual client's circumstances need to be considered from case to case, based on things like the number of years to retirement, funding level by whom, also whether the tapered annual allowance has an impact on that particular client. And another critical input is that of CPI. If it continues along similar lines to where we are today, 43%, then the margin between the remaining an active member or becoming a deferred member diminishes in terms of the differential between the pot sizes. Because if you imagine if the lifetime allowance is not moved up significantly, the excess is greater in the situation where the member remains active in the scheme. Okay? And that therefore narrows the difference between it. Also things like whether the individual is a high rate taxpayer in retirement. So the example we used, I was just looking at it at basic rate. So if you take the ICE support and just invert it for basic rate tax, so this is a 31,000, but if you factor in higher rate, it pushes up a bit more, and therefore the margin between the two becomes a lot closer. So really it's a case of looking at each individual client scenario on its own. And I don't envy you in that task, and I don't envy how you're going to actually put that over to your clients. And then to throw another factor into the melting point is whether the lifetime ISA is at any place in that particular client's financial plan. This is what we know at the moment. This is what's been disclosed for consultation. So it's available to anyone to start under the age of 40, and the bonus is available up until age 50. But there are severe restrictions on being able to take the money out. And as an aside, if any product provider was coming out with a product today where there was a 5% charge for withdrawing your money, there would be an uproar. Yeah, Mr. Osborne has put this into the consultation. If anybody takes money out of the lifetime ISA, other than for the reasons given there, they will suffer that charge of 5% on fund. They will lose the interest, the growth, etc. So it's very much, I think, a retrograde step to where we were in the past with products and charges. In my opinion, also, it's a confused purpose run. So I'd just like to try and illustrate that by way of an example. So assumptions made, 5% investment return, something you might laugh at that, but just do it for the sake of it, 1.5 on cash. And one of the options, what we've said, is that the person goes cash to age 45 and then flips over to an investment return. I've just chosen the age 45 based on my own age, give or take a few years. And no sniggering at the back row from my colleagues there. So the equivalent gross amount going into the pensions, 5k for a basic rate taxpayer and 6,667 for the high rate taxpayer. So statistically, and I believe my colleague will pick up on this a little bit this afternoon, people are far more likely to invest in cash ISAs and in stocks and shares. So the different outcomes are significant, as can be seen by the chart from the graph. With one return of 179,000 and the other, i.e. the investment one, 86% higher at 333. So if you're saving money for a house purchase, would you be prepared to take the risk of investing in the markets? Probably not. But if you're saving for retirement, would it be prudent to stay in cash? Well, even someone at 45 switching over, and they're still 17% lower than if they were in investment fund to begin with. In my opinion, it's just sort of confusing the issue. What's it for? Is it a retirement planning tool, or is it a purpose for buying a house? And then if we factor in pensions, looking first of all at the basic rate taxpayer, there's really not an awful lot of difference between the two. Part of the reason is that the first contribution of the pension receives tax relief and TV up front. With the lifetime ISA, the tax relief comes at the end of the tax year. And also with the lifetime ISA, the individual isn't getting the bonus from year 50 onwards. But in the case of someone who's a higher rate taxpayer, the difference is quite significant. So it's nearly 260% higher than someone going into the lifetime ISA on an investment basis. When I looked at this morning, I didn't do that, but when I was looking at it last night on my own laptop, it did it super simple. Anyway, and so yeah, so it's 260% higher when compared to the pure cash ISA, and 140% higher than when compared to the investment ISA. So is the lifetime ISA, as been suggested by some commentators, the thin end of the wedge to limit tax relief for pension contributions? Otherwise, what's its purpose, other than to confuse savers, apart from those of you who seek your advice in this room? So I don't think it's one thing or the other, but I think, as it was alluded to earlier today, it is the start of a process to change how we think about saving for retirement. And that comes down to effectively the amount of money that's paid out by the Treasury in tax relief, which is vast. So, in conclusion, I'm ahead of schedule, the first part of the session just picked up on what's the proposals in the finance bill to resolve some of the anomalies that exist in pension tax legislation. We spent a little bit of time looking at the implications of the reduction in the lifetime allowance and the need to consider each company individually before you make a decision whether they remain an active member of the scheme or whether they rely on that transitional protection that's available. But again, I would just add the caveat that if people are you really need to document that somewhere on the file that you have spoken about it and the things that you shouldn't do to avoid the possibility of applying for it successfully. And finally, I just voiced an opinion on whether the lifetime ISA will have a confused purpose for many people, and trying to support that with just one quick example. And on that note, if you look at things from a purely capital value perspective, then continue to fund a pension for a higher rate taxpayer will far outweigh the benefits compared to the lifetime ISA, provided, of course, the higher rate tax relief continues. Who knows where we're going with that one. Whereas for a basic rate taxpayer, it's very, very close. So for probably quite a few of you in the room with clients in this subset, those that can afford to fund their pension and fund the lifetime ISA, that's probably the thing to do, particularly if those individuals are high earning individuals and are going to be caught by the tapered annual allowance with maybe only 10,000 of annual earnings to work with. So this gives them an opportunity to effectively put in, if they satisfy the criteria to be able to open one, the ability to get another £5,000 into a very tax efficient vehicle, which could be used for retirement income. It's highly unlikely that people in that position will be using it to fund the purchase of their first house, so more likely to be used for retirement purposes. But in terms of the income tax position, Neil, my colleague, will pick up on that later on today, this afternoon, in fact. So that's basically me finished. I think I've brought it back on time. Don't know if there's any questions.
We've time for one, if that's okay.
Yes.
At a practical level, do you know what HMRC are looking for if someone applies for both IP and fixed protection at the same time?
Well, effectively everything is the same as was the situation in 2014.
We've had HMRC come back saying they can't have IP, so I'm wondering if you have to identify that the IP is dormant or something like that?
Well, yeah, sorry. What you have is fixed protection will give you 1.25 million. Individual protection will give you personal limited loans equivalent to the value of your funds at that point. So if that individual funds will say 1.2 million, which is less than fixed protection, then the IP is dormant. But that's,
do you specifically have to state to HMRC that you want it to be dormant?
well, you wouldn't want it any other way because the higher 1.25.
Exactly.
So I don't think I'm not aware of anything that's different.
Okay.
So it's a bit like primary and enhanced protection.
Yes,
Primary is the dormant, enhanced.
but when you applied for them, you didn't say per se.
No, I think it's a given that the one is lower than the other, so it's
As I
the
say,
upper
we've had
limit.
HMRC come back and say, no, you can't do this.
No, I think because it'll be two separate applications. Because some people will.
Well, it was. FP was done earlier and IP was done some 6 to 18 months later.
Well, I suppose in that scenario you would question why would you be doing the individual protection if you only got fixed protection. At that point you're crystallising the funds. So it would be whether there was a reason for going for individual protection in the sense of there's going to be some benefit earlier than that. But I don't think there's anything strong
that
to
it
do.
would protect you if your university became auto-enrolled or, as you say...
Yeah, but the thing is you could apply for individual protection at that point anyway, so I'm sure there will be scenarios where that'll apply, but I don't think there's anything stopping you doing it, and I think you would just put on, there will be, in the forms there will be boxes to say that you don't have X, Y, and Z forms of protection, because you won't be able to apply for it.
I was wondering, are you, sorry about this, but are you around for the next 15 minutes?
Yeah, I'm around.
Could I ask you, would it be okay? Sorry about that, to cut you off. I'm sorry, I can't. Ian, thank you very much indeed.